So thank you and welcome everybody. And thank you for joining us today on our Women for Solutions webinar. And we are proud to share our 161 webinar where we create awareness, we learn, we connect, we inspire action to reimagine and to regenerate our world. I'm Laura Jadaru-Koch, founder and CEO of Women for Solutions, a global network of thousands of women and men, entrepreneur and intrapreneur in over 40 countries that share simple, effective, and scalable solutions to move forward to a more caring economy. We focus on two major problems that are today burning us alive, that are inequality and climate change. Because we believe that mostly this is derived from an economy of endless growth, that for too long, obsessed economists and policymakers have really pushed this addiction to growth mentality. And today, our webinar is about that, how we can find tools to overcome this way of philosophy of moving our values. And Barbara Bulik, our amazing speaker today, will share why we need to prioritize wellness over economic growth. And she will share incredibly innovative practices that actually work and build care and trust in communities. So fundamental to start from communities, we see that. And on that note, I would like to introduce you to Barbara. First of all, thank you, Barbara, for your friendship of many years and your authentic and very effective care for making the world a better place. Barbara, you are embodiment of a true, authentic change maker. Her positive impact on thousands of lives is truly admirable. Barbara is a social innovator. We call her also a social chemist, because she's a chemist as a profession. And she is the founder of the Global Development and the non-for-profit collaboratory SDG Collab in Geneva, Switzerland. Her practices are focused on transdisciplinary design and research of new social arrangements that prioritize well-being of people and planet over economic growth. That is exactly what Women for Solutions is all about. So thank you, Barbara. And Barbara has an impressive resume or impressive background, not only background professional, but also an incredible human being. She, for more than 30 years, has been in major innovative roles of leadership in diplomacy, in business, in public health, in more than 30 countries in Europe, America, Asia, Africa. And she was also one of the founding Clinton Foundation founders and the Global Coalition in Geneva. She's also a founding CEO of KRKA, a pharmaceutical that she represented in New York. She's the lead designer and steward of our CLIJ, an experimental social arrangement throughout the cities in Romania. And she really values how to improve communities through her incredible touch, personal, and her know-how of leadership. We met through as ambassadors of the Reboot the Future by Kim Pullman, that is creating a social movement to focus on the golden rule that we both appreciate very much. Treat others and the planet as you would wish to be treated. So her must-read book, I really recommend the book, Activating Values in Urban Transitions, 2022, co-author with Eric Gordon. She will be mentioning today. And Barbara has published many books as the one and articles on rethinking collaboration. She has an amazing op-ed in the New York Times, the Financial Times, and that is a must that I will pass along to everybody. Barbara, please share with us why and what has made you such an amazing change maker.
I am so excited to be here with you today, and I'm so inspired by the network that you have created all around the world. And I can see from the conversations, being part of the network, the very inspiring voices from entrepreneurs, men and women popping up all around the world in the country. So it's really a real pleasure to be part of this conversation with you today and share my, say, a small bit of a practices that I hope contribute towards creating a well-being society. I will share my presentation. It may be more interesting than just looking at myself, but for those of you who look at my picture, I put this background. You don't really see what it is, so there's some abstract picture of people, but if I move myself to the other side, you see a young person. He's a son of a dear friend of mine at the municipality in one of the cities in Romania that I work with. And you see how he's looking into the future. And I believe we are all here today to really think how we will serve our future generation and what is it that we can do differently for the better future of generations that are coming. With this, I will try to share my presentation. Just a second. Is it sharing?
It's not yet there. Excellent. Perfect. There we go.
Perfect. So why we need to prioritize well-being over growth? I think for the audience today, you probably have many answers. I will try to share a little bit of my journey and experience and help you inspire with sharing some emerging practices that are popping up all around the world. They are perhaps not so visible. They are clearly not part of the mainstream conversation, yet we see more and more of them, more of new stories rising from the communities, from the cities, from the businesses, from the countries around the world. So I will share a few of those examples. Oops, I don't know why is this not. As Laura mentioned, my focus and passion is designing and researching new social arrangements. I strongly believe that we can redesign the arrangements, reimagine social arrangements for our futures, for our future, and the kind of arrangement that prioritize the well-being of people, other species, and our planet. I call myself a social chemist, and I call myself a social chemist to challenge the existing paradigm of, let's say, fragmented disciplines and sectors. I really have a background in chemistry. I really have a background in sociology. So I'm bringing those backgrounds together into social chemistry or social alchemistry to really rethink how we can rearrange our values and relationship when we are working in the society. I don't know why I have.
It's not there. Oh,
Yeah.
now I can.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I found it. We all know we live in an interdependent world. Here is an image of pollinators. You may know that out of over 1,400 crops on our planet, 80% need pollinators. We are completely interdependent from pollinators and many other species, yet we forget how interdependent we are. In Europe, for example, a big part of bees is in front of the extinction. In the US, the number is much bigger, and it's really important to think, how is it that we deal with the interconnectedness and with our actions in the environment? I love how Joanna Macy and David Corton talk about the stories of our life today. They talk about 3 stories: business as usual. Most of us are in it every day. We see it on the mainstream. We see it in the mainstream media. It is promoting unlimited growth based on predominantly extractive economy. The second part, we also see, it's also the story that is happening right now. It is called Great Unraveling. We see a number of actions predominantly by journalists, scientists, and activists that are stepping up to the action. The third one that we see is happening, and then this is where I see my journey, and I think many of you in this journey going forward, is a great turning. It's a shift from unlimited growth economy towards a great turning that allows us, finds a pathway towards a well-being economy where well-being is prioritized. We could call it a thriving or sustainable future. So I will share some practices that are emerging in the great turning, but we have to know that all these 3 stories are happening right now at the same time, and it is really our choice. Where do we want to be? In the business as usual, in the great unraveling, or in the great turning? I believe that unless we step up activities and actions and raise awareness about the great turning, we are really, I think we are at the tipping point, deciding probably over the next decades whether or not our civilization will survive. There is no doubt that our planet will survive. However, I believe that we are really threatened right now with our thinking whether or not we will take the right, bold and courageous path towards the great turning. My title today really is inspired by a recent article I wrote in the Financial Times, Why We Need to Prioritize Well-Being Over Growth, that was just recently published. And I was really thrilled to work with Financial Times editors closely together. I have to say it was a very challenging journey to get this published in the Financial Times. However, after a couple of weeks and a good collaboration with the editors, I was really thrilled to see that even the mainstream media, such as Financial Times, is opening up to listen to these new stories of great turning. So I really encourage you and invite you to reach out to every possible channel and engage with the media, even though you think that the media is promoting the business as usual. I believe it is very important that the voices of new practices are heard and that the examples are presented. And my article was specifically focused on the future and the cities because, as you probably know, on our planet today, over 50% of population of 8 billion today is below 35 years old. So our population is very young. even younger in Africa and Asia. Europe counts among the oldest. Yet, this is very important that we really engage with young people for their future. And why cities play such an important role? Because by 2050, 2/3 of global population will live in urban area. So clearly engaging young people, working closely with cities, and utilizing in a meaningful way technology. These are really some leverage point that can facilitate or accelerate our pathways towards a great turning, assuming, of course, that this is centered around the values of care and caring economy, as Laura very nicely mentioned at the beginning. So on my journey, I have asked with my fellow innovators and practitioners, what if we reimagine our future? What if innovation and our life really prioritize goals of well-being over just economic growth? What if we prioritize care for others over novel products? And what if we prioritize building trust over getting things done quickly, meaning over productivity and efficiency that we hear it about every day? So it really is about our state of mind that you see the little illustration presented by a graphic artist that I have been working closely with, also on the journey to help us reimagine our future. So what have we done? What have I done on this journey? Recently, after almost 4 years of engagement in the cities, we have published a research that looks at how do we activate values of care and trust in transitions. We look specifically at urban areas, but very similarly applies to other communities, to other organizations, either businesses or governments or communities, and so on. So this is the book that you can look at, ourcluj.city. It's an in-depth study of how can we actually approach such innovation that prioritize well-being in the urban setups. I will share a few more examples with you to be more concrete. What does it actually mean? This is a city, it's a mid-sized city, it's a capital of historic capital of Transylvania in Romania, but it could be any city. Just imagine a city where you live now, and imagine and reflect perhaps for a moment the situation that your city or your neighborhood or your community faced during the COVID pandemic, where all the systems or many of the systems failed, and we had clearly seen that we need to reimagine situation. We have to rethink how do we work together, how do we collaborate, public, private, civic, communities. It was really very evident how our system need to be reimagined. Sometimes I have a challenge moving. I don't know why.
Maybe your cursor is not going forward.
I don't know. Okay.
There.
Why is it that we are doing that? As I mentioned before, it is about the future generation. It is about how can we not only serve future generation, but how we can also engage existing generation from early on for this future. So what have we done in this city? We created an urban living laboratory, and you may know that Such urban living laboratories are usually designed around specific topics such as tourism or education or some infrastructural issues. Yet here we ask, what if those projects and innovations are designed around values of care and trust? We have engaged public governments of various institutions in the city, municipality, and other institutions, numerous civic groups, communities and NGOs, various companies, various universities. The city has 10 universities, so different parts of university that was open for such exploration, media, various media groups, and philanthropy. So we have to mention and highlight that this kind of work certainly needs resources, sustainable resources over a long period of time. And thanks to a new kind of philanthropic foundations, in this case, Fondation Bottnar, which is today one of the largest and newest foundations in Switzerland, that are looking at funding system transformation that prioritize well-being. So there is an increasing number of new kind of funders that are looking at this kind of experiments. And this picture represents, each oval is one project, one social innovation project, and you see the little dots is really the ecosystem of those partners, and you see how both projects and partners are interconnected. For illustration, these are some examples from living projects. They range from using technology for improving healthy lifestyles, using technology to reducing school dropouts that are quite remarkable in Romania, doing various kind of interdisciplinary research to actually understand what is well-being, what is happening with the well-being of young residents in the city. For most cities today in the world, if you ask mayor or municipality, do they actually know what is the well-being of the population or young residents? They wouldn't have a clue. So we commissioned here, and this is an ongoing process of the multi-stakeholder interdisciplinary research to actually look constantly what is actually happening with the well-being of young population. What is the health situation? What are the environmental factors? What is the agency of people? And what is the enabling environment that enables social and other types of innovation? I cannot stress enough importance of communication and different practices of communication, of ongoing meetings. You can see here a group of multiple stakeholders from all across these different groups. We continue organizing regular stakeholder meetings, sharing practices around the value-based urban living laboratories. And you can see that this kind of experiments cannot happen in 1 year. They cannot be a short-term project. Our starting phase is 10 years, and this is really only a first phase to begin to mobilize the city ecosystem as a living system, to start thinking differently, to start functioning differently. And you see just the introduction phase is two years, development, another 2 to 3 years, transformation, this is where we are now, happening, in fact, much slower, because people in communities in general do not change so easily unless they are forced to change, or unless there is really an intrinsic motivation and drive to change. And then we hope that the purpose is really that the transition is that happens, and then the ownership of these projects and initiative continues, owned by the local partners. Another issue that I want to share with you is really important, how we, what kind of values we bring into the meetings. We introduced so-called caring principles, which are guiding principles. How do we actually meet or gather with communities? We try to introduce various exercises that pay more attention to our own well-being, well-being of others, and well-beings of community. We try to emphasize importance of time to build trust, which is very often broken, especially working in very low trust environment. It's really important, low trust environments tend to be very transactional. And when the trust is very low and transactions tend to be very fast to build trust momentarily, yet on the long term, this trust is not built. So values that matter, time for being together, and conversations. And conversations of three kinds. Conversations of how do we imagine future, how do we reconcile the past, and how do we share power differently. Again. These three practices that I mentioned, imagining future, remembering the past, and sharing the power, are really the central path for transitions. And I would like to share with you some of the examples that we introduced. In imagining future, not everybody is open to imagine future. So we have worked very closely with artists to create imaginative spaces and exercises to encourage people to feel comfortable to reimagine and rethink the established patterns. Remembering the past, future cannot be imagined unless the remembering of the past or reconciling the past trauma, both individual and collective, are addressed. Here is an example of the city that was known for a gardening community. Here is a picture that you see is a Hungarian family, the Hosdezeni family, that have been known for gardening and providing the city with fruits and vegetables over centuries. Yet after the industrialization and communism, this has been pretty much destroyed, and we have developed the various maps, environmental maps, to raise awareness among the communities, to remind them about the unique history of the city and how the city could learn from the past to imagine the future. And right now you see it's interesting stories that came out of this, and a number of initiatives that are slowly being developed of a new generation of urban gardening inspired by the past. Sharing power, perhaps one of the most important that we are all facing today. How do we, when we are developing the collaboration, how do we share power differently? What is the democracy that we are looking for? How can we rethink democracy when we are working together with citizens, public, private, civic stakeholders? I think there is a lot to learn from different communities. There is a real struggle right now of hierarchical structures that we know that are not the solution for the well-being economy. What is emerging now are really citizen participation and various practices grounds up that are resurfacing and reorganizing or self-organizing models to share power differently. In our case, we have been empowering and encouraging with various incentives. How can the city share power differently with municipality, with private sector, by creating a new governance mechanism? For example, when we created the Social Innovation Fund, how can we design the Social Innovation Fund through participatory engagement, and how governance can be shared by all these stakeholders that were part of the participatory engagement. These are the new practices that are emerging. You probably have heard of various kind of participatory budgeting that is also known in various communities, and so on and so forth. So here are just some examples for inspiration. What kind of practices can be introduced to inspire and to catalyze imagination, remembering, and sharing power. For example, for imagining, as I mentioned, creating a new digital and physical spaces for imagination, mapping relationship, engaging local artists and creatives. For remembering, it's very important that we create a new kind of safe spaces where people and communities or employees can reflect together and share openly what is on their minds. Another important practice is mapping environments, such as the one that I shared before with the gardening communities. Similarly, can be done mapping environments in local communities where businesses are based or where other practices are based, to understand what was the history of this place and space and how this can inspire our future. Sharing power. Similarly, identify and empower trust broker. Trust is broken in our society among various, we can see in various places, and it's very important to intentionally identify who are these trust brokers, and fund and support what is value forward, not only valuable for the short term. Establish opportunities to experiment with processes. I think process thinking is a very important part, often neglected. We tend to look at the outcomes and final products and not processes. And innovation in processes is very important. The processes that are participatory, engaging, sharing, engaging communities that are usually not at the table, bringing artists to the table, artists and scientists and practitioners and so on and so forth, to really open up the way of thinking and doing and being. And very important, embracing failure on the ongoing process as a learning opportunity, evaluating and sharing learning locally, nationally, and globally. And I'm immensely grateful to Laura to give this opportunity today to share learnings with this wonderful community around the world. This is in short. Perhaps I'll just mention one thought, that we are facing unprecedented social, economic, political, cultural, psychological, and spiritual crisis. And I believe it comes from our own disconnectedness from our inner self, others, and the nature. And I believe that each of us has a very important role to play. And even though when people often feel discouraged and alone in the challenging journey forward, I believe that now it's a unique opportunity and I think a beautiful moment when we can really come together and create a new patterns and new arrangements in a society based on a different set of values and relationship to create this great turning towards the well-being society. Thank you very much. And I very much look forward to continue this conversation in many little spaces around the world.
Thank you. And let's say, can you stop? There we go. Thank you very much, Barbara. This was really inspiring, and what you've done not only in Romania, but in many other parts of the world as an educator of young, of children, of adults. It's amazing, your trajectory, all these many, many years. And if you can share some challenges or aha moments through your life that actually have brought you where you are today, so that we can understand and maybe follow, emulate what you've done and take those learnings from you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Oh, it's a challenging question that always invites a lot of reflection. I think it's, if I reflect back in my life and into the future, it's very interesting when, I don't know how it is with others, on this talk, but for me, it was very interesting. When I was born, I was a little girl. I think my first memory goes back to 4 years old or so, when I was sitting in a grass in a field in Slovenia. I'm from a little country called Slovenia, which is very, very biodiverse and known for a beautiful nature. And I cherish that very first moment, remembering how I felt connected to the nature. I felt really one at that moment and immensely happy. And somehow through the perhaps brainwashing, through the educational system and the norms that you have to comply and the standards, kind of the achieving, getting degrees, awards, titles, and so on and so forth, at least I disconnected from a moment from that feeling of purpose, why I am here, really closely connected, being an Earth citizen. I lost that moment, influenced by environment, and not continue listening to myself. And then when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I had this unique opportunity to become a CEO of a Slovenian leading company, and I was running their operations in New York and in the United States as a young woman. And it's just didn't, of course it was exciting and challenging, and I was very proud that I can do these kind of things. But what really made me think and rethink the journey was seeing, when I was the CEO of the pharmaceutical company, which is providing less expensive medicines for people. And as you know, in the US, the healthcare system, even in the wealthiest economy, unfortunately, is really totally failing. And at that time, there were 60 million uninsured. And yet I saw on my journey that all that mattered was actually not to care about communities and those people that are uninsured, but in a pharma business, all that matters is profit and profit and profit, and local and court case and winning the court case and rip off the profits. And this was a journey. And, it just did not make sense to me. This is not how it should be. Yet to majority, it seemed totally normal. That's how it should be. That's how we designed it. And I said, no, that it is not how it should be. So that was really an aha moment for me, to disengage from the corporate world. And I wouldn't say disengage, because it's important, it's part of the ecosystem, but to radically shift my journey and left and joined the President Clinton Foundation, which which was a new foundation that looked at the world and the global pandemic at that time, HIV/AIDS, and we ask ourselves, can we rethink how pandemics are addressed? Not only, can we rethink the relationships and values? And this brought me on this journey where I am today, of course, much more independent, really looking even more radically how we can rethink and rebuild relationships.
Yeah, thank you. I really love your life journey, that seems like we have a sisters in soul, because not only you, me, but millions of other peoples are going through this journey of realizing and starting to prioritize, as you said, care, well-being, building trust. And we also add in Women for Solution that we need to make visible and valuable the care of work of people. And because if we don't care for the people that like children, adults, the sick, the elderly, you know, that's our life, that's who we are, and that's how we were built as human, to care for others. I think we get a neuroscientific high just with our just by caring for others. So that's something that we need to really value and make more visible. But in your journey, can you explain us or can you tell us your experience on collaboration? How did your journey as an independent woman from Slovenia and going to New York, and then where the values 20 years ago were all about drive, growth, and independence, and how did you match the collaboration in your work in Romania and other sectors, especially now that we have the SDG 17 to flag on?
Yeah. No, I think we, as humans, we are a species that is collaborator. And I think if you look at children, I love going to museums. And my favorite part is where you go, where you see, usually museums have spaces where kids can play. And it's very interesting to observe the room in the museum. You would see artworks or some installation and kids playing, and kids who don't know each other, they play together. And then there are benches around, and then you see parents sitting on these benches, and they don't talk to each other. So it's, you know, it's very reflective how we have become. But I think if you maintain this childlike openness and the curiosity and heart open to love, I think then there is no limits. And this is something that is not treasured in our society. This is not something that is part of our education system, especially the Western education system does not pay attention to emotional well-being, to collaboration, to importance of love and care. And I think this is really something that we have to, of course, it starts with self-care, because
that was my next question to you. Tell us about your journey of self-care.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for asking. I think it's also, I am on this journey. I continue to be on this learning journey. And I have to say that especially the pandemic, the last pandemic, allowed me to have more time for myself and to reflect even deeper. And I had a tremendous opportunity to deepen my practices and knowledge with other wisdom traditions, including Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, that puts a significant value to importance of leading with compassion And leading, the ancient text emphasize, on leadership, how important it is, the role of generosity in leadership. Imagine that our world, or just look at the leaders today, how many leaders have a quality of having a generous heart and being compassionate. Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand clearly is such a unique example, really groundbreaking if you listen to her last talk in the parliament. I mean, these are the kind of leaders, and it's interesting that they are women. It's rare. I don't recall actually any men at that level. I'm sure they are, but not at the, haven't seen at the governmental level. But this is the kind of the leadership that we need, and we shouldn't be afraid to be vulnerable and show this vulnerability. And I also want to share, the importance of wisdom traditions and wisdom practices from various cultures. It's really important to bring them back, or to revive them and bring them into our society. There is so much to learn from ancient cultures that have really cherished different values, and they have been much more aligned with nature, and bring it intentionally into educational system, into practices, into organizations, into communities, every possible way, or any possible way. I think this is really important. So I am continuing being on this journey. I recently came from a wonderful training by John Halifax. She developed a wonderful training which is called GRACE. And GRACE stands for gather attention, recall intention, attune to self and others, consider at that moment what will serve, and E stands for engage and end. I think this is a beautiful little practice, when we are dealing with challenging collaborations and numerous conflicts, to bring this into sometimes quietly, sometimes, express it. I think it's really a beautiful practice, essential for these critical times.
That's fantastic, very inspiring. We'll definitely have to talk more about this grace movement in the world, because only with self-care we can really move forward to a more and care for others in more altruistic way. But you mentioned New Zealand, and in your Financial Times article, you mentioned metrics. For Women for Solutions, metrics is fundamental, because only what you measure, you can see what is the problem, you can change, you can move forward. So in New Zealand, they have moved from GDP, that you highly criticize, that is just growth, and they measure things that are not that don't grow a society at all in many cases, but it's about well-being. Can you tell us more about the metrics in New Zealand, in other countries? Is this movement really going forward? Like, I think that also Kate Raworth and others are really pushing, and it seems like now they're really bubbling up all these innovators about metrics of economy that really can change.
Yes, indeed, Laura. I think that's a really excellent question. I write about it in Financial Times, and I have to tell a little story. When I was writing this article, and when I was writing about alternative examples that are not fitting into the GDP growth metrics, indeed, Andrew Jack, who is the chief editor, was really pushing back very strongly because he was saying, you know, show me the metrics, show me the indicators. I still don't get it. Where are the metrics? So it was very, very challenging. And I have to say, you know, for some of the things that we treasure, we do not have metrics yet. We have to develop them. And we can only develop them together. So this is the process that is happening. For example, in New Zealand, they have a fantastic well-being outlook, which is it's a plan, it's policy and plan linked to the budget. Of course, it requires metrics, and they have various components in this well-being outlook for the country. One is they look at the human capabilities. Then they look at natural environment. They look at social cohesion. Social cohesion is an important one that is often missed. And
What do they mean in New Zealand about social cohesion?
sorry?
What do they mean about social cohesion?
They mean where community practices social innovation infrastructure community. So that's a really an important part of the society. So it's embedded, it's incorporated alongside physical and financial capital. European Union has, for example, now cohesion funds, you know, cohesion funds that are mostly supporting various types of social innovation funds. This is really something that is in development.
Because one of the things we say at Women for Solutions is that how come GDP does not measure the value and the incredible value that an NGO brings or volunteer work that is so embedded in our society and is not valuable nor visible. Maybe an article here and there is coming out, but it's not added into the GDP. But what is added is, for example, the money the United States made, for example, with the Exxon Valdez spill, all the legal fees, all the contribution they made, but they don't add up or they don't put a minus on how they destroyed nature. You know, so those are the things that that are big question marks.
Yes, indeed. And I think there are multiple movements right now going on by various new economists, right? Kate Raworth that you mentioned, or Mariana Mazzucato, or others that are really looking into that. But I think it goes further. You know, the movement around commons, that's another thinking about commons. I think another way. I think that at the moment we are in this transition that we really have to experiment because we don't have one answer. How do we actually do it? I think we see multiple experiments. I mentioned, like Kate Raworth has developed a DEAL, Donut Economics Action Labs. They're popping up now in different places around the world, from communities to cities. Amsterdam is quite ahead of it. There are various communities practicing, experimenting with it. There is a transition movement that I also talk about in the article. It's also based on different kind of principles. It has transformed, for example, some cities, city of Leeds and their food chain has been really transformed. These are experiments right now, and I think we have to go far beyond economics to really rethink what kind of values need to be included in the new measurement. We really have to challenge value and values and rethink value and values and talk about it openly.
Yeah, exactly, because our two burning issues are very clear that are burning us alive is inequality and climate change. And we need to move faster or very fast to really move forward. And the only way to do it is through collaboration and through really instilling these values from early childhood on. And what I really love, what you've done and how you've really promoted community-based initiative where you inspire youth and really give them the basics for care, for wellness, and building trust. I think that your work is really fabulous. What brought you to actually go back to your mother country and work there and give back?
Yeah, I think, as I worked with global leaders, and I would say the mainstream ecosystem, some of the leading CEOs and United Nations agency, and I'm currently based in Geneva, working with this kind of stakeholders, I have seen loud and clear that true radical innovation that we need is not happening there. It is happening in communities. It is happening with countless experiments that are going on right now. Just like, like a mycelium, when the conditions are right, then the mushrooms come out. I think that's what we see right now. I think we have to cultivate this mycelium intentionally and learn from each other, and actually talk about these new practices, because very often we don't know what else is out there because you don't see it in the mainstream media. And it's important to be part of the new collaboratives, the new communities, such as your community. I think it's really important for sharing practices and looking out which are other communities that are emerging and growing. Also, thanks to technology, this is today possible.
Yeah, it's amazing how I think that every human being, I make the parallel with imaginary cells that you and I share very deeply, that we all have these imaginary cells like caterpillars, that when they become mature, they start to reconnect and vibrate at the same way. And from a caterpillar, they win into a butterfly. And I think into a better world, and that's what humans are all about. We've gone through this in millions of years of a process, and now it's our turn to really bloom into a beautiful, collaborative, caring, well-being world. And Barbara, to close, would you like to give us some closing words about what is your message to the world? What tools would you give the individually and professionally to women and men to move forward to more caring society or economy?
Thank you. That's a big question. I'll be very humble in this. I would say, be who you truly, truly, truly are. Be courageous enough to be who you truly are from deepest of your heart, and share that with others. I think this would make a tremendous impact. I know that's not a business-like answer, but I think that's the kind of answers and relationship we need to build. And I think encourage children and young people and support initiative to help them be aware of what is happening and who they truly are, the beautiful souls that they are, so that they do not get brainwashed too quickly and follow the existing patterns that we know are destructive.
Yeah, especially with the social media, with the wars, with all these things that are distracting us from our true essence. So in your practice of mindfulness, can you give us a few words of what do you do and what have you learned from it? We always need to be reminded and reminded about this, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, I have a few practices. I have a cushion in my studio where I work. So it reminds me, when I get stressed and you forget about things, that there is a place and space in wherever I am to sit and to think. So I have a few practices. One of my favorite, which is very simple that everybody can do, is in fact before waking up. When I wake up, I am not truly awake yet, so I do a little practice of centering myself to be truly part of this universe and nature and world, you know, just a species in this cosmos. And I connect with myself deeply, and I try to set intention in the morning before I wake up. So I feel really, how would I say, more fully aware. Then I really feel awake. I do that
Like
in the morning.
you reset your brain to focus more on intention of growth and expansion and care for the world than just
I just connect deeply with my heart and, you know, this earthy community, and this is the best wake up for me. And this second one, I love nature and walks in nature. The walking meditation or silence. I don't know about you, but for me, silence is a very important practice to stop, to observe my thoughts and to center myself. I think we need more silence in our world that is constantly grasping for attention from all around, and it's not enough time, you know, that we don't have enough time for silence just to be, so then we can do out of this quiet being.
So beautiful. So these two practices are so simple, and the key is to be reminded continuously. So many times I also have some practices, and I put a little something around my wrist or something to remember them. And but the morning practice your morning practice takes a few minutes. And so every one of the 8 billion people in the world could be doing that.
Yeah.
And opening their heart, resetting their day to a more joyful way of starting with a different attitude. Huh? So I can see why you have become such a beautiful and change maker of really changing the lives of thousands, maybe even millions in a few years of people that you are impacting because of your incredible life journey.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. And silence is very important in nature, or mental silence. And with that, I would like to thank you, Barbara. This has been amazing conversation. We will definitely be connecting again and revaluing maybe more on our spiritual path and talk about that. And I want to thank everybody for being part of this community. And our next webinar is on the 21st of April. And we're going to talk again about issues that are so important. That is Patricia Koster and Jill Reed will talk about their new book called Malekus Gift. And what is it about? Is the gift of breathing, of reconnecting with your breath, but for kids. Because we need to, even though we're born breathing, but we forget that we can actually control it. And the way we control it, we control our essence. And this book and these two scientific women and storytellers and authors have written an amazing book, and they have a reason why they're doing it. It's really fascinating how they can impact through breathing and deter technology in kids. On that note, I want to thank you all, and we will connect very soon.
Thank you very much.
You're
Such
welcome.
a pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you. Thank you.